Okay, Pegram,
Mr.
let's
Greco.
get started first. What we want you to do, give us a rundown. You left here after eighth grade. Take us through eighth grade up to now, what you've been doing, your school, what you've been teaching, your business, and things like that. And whatever
Okay.
you see interesting along the way.
Okay. Gosh, that's a lot of time. That's 40 years. Eighth grade, I left and went to Groton School, and that seemed like an odd thing to do at the time, but then all my siblings followed, and DeSales in particular, my brother, came a year or two later, and then we both went on to Yale after Groton, and we both majored in English. I wonder why. Inspired, we both majored in English. And then after Yale, I worked for a year in Washington, D.C., where I taught English at Madeira School and drama, English and drama. And I worked in the National Gallery of Art as a kind of a trainee, everything. And then I got into the PhD program in England at Cambridge, which is what I had been wanting to do. And I was lucky to have a scholarship to do that. That was called a choral scholarship, which meant I had to do a lot of music, but I was doing my PhD in English. And I spent I lived in Cambridge for 4 years, and I spent about 7 years on the PhD, and I loved every second of that. And I worked on my singing at the same time, singing in one of the many choirs at Cambridge that are so famous. And then I did my PhD on English literature in India in the 19th and 20th century. And then I kind of, like everyone else at the early stages of an academic career, I popped around from place to place and eventually settled on a job at NYU in New York in the English faculty, which I did for not long at all, I think 2 years. And then I ran out of money. This happens to academics and teachers. And I ran out of money because I was living in New York, and I was probably paid, I think, $12,000 a year, and that didn't go far in Manhattan. So I stopped teaching, and I went into various businessy jobs. And I actually worked for the Pegram company, the alcohol people. And the only reason why I got that job is that the recruiter thought it was hilarious to place someone named Pegram at Seagram. So you never know. All those years of learning and skill building, it all came down to this dumb joke. But I was quite happy about it because it made me distinctive. And my first ever email address actually was pegram@seagram.com, which is kind of fun. And I stayed there for a few years and realized I didn't want to spend my life shifting bottles around the world for other people to drink. Although the Christmas party was fun. It was a Jewish company with a really fun Christmas party. And I stayed there for about two and a half years. And then I went back to England to do an MBA at the University of London, the London Business School. And then I went into some businesses, but my intention was always just to go back into universities and teach. And so I did work in various entrepreneurial ventures in London in TV and food and finance. And I didn't particularly enjoy it, but I learned a lot. And then I became a professor in a business school. And that's what I've been doing ever since. So I taught at the University of London and then moved to Oxford 12 years ago and to the business school there and to Brasenose College. Oxford's divided up into little bits, one of which is called Brasenose College. And I teach the undergraduates there and MBAs in the business school. And I think that is my full resume. I hope I didn't lose you along the way.
Well, let me, I've been looking through the yearbook. You were here in 8th grade, and actually, as I was thinking about this last night, your name has come up in my, I guess, there are some strong memes out there from you. By the way, has the meme thing hit?
Oh, yeah.
What is I know, what's her name? Susan Blackmore. I've been
Mhm.
trying to wade through her book now. I've gotten all of a sudden, so I've been isolated. My daughter my Mrs. Greco passed away 3 years ago. My daughter's kept me isolated. So most of the time I'm reading. I stay away from the TV as much as possible.
Good.
And I got into, when I was in school, I was never one for English, for science. I got into this meme thing. So I'm really I picked up Dawkins's book,
Oh, right. Yeah.
Selfish Gene,
Yeah.
and I'm going through it, but my background is so weak. I don't know if you remember my son-in-law, Mr. Wagner.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
He's my son-in-law, He retired, by the way, 2 years ago. But I'd call him and say, well, what does this tell? Explain something in this. So I'm wading through there now. But so you had some memes there that were in there that kept you in my wooded brain, if I accept Blackmore. And as I get older, I'll tell you about that later. But a few of the things I remember, I'm looking at your John Eisenbach. You remember him?
Yes.
John Eisenbach, I remember. First, you came in and wrote a composition for me.
Yeah.
And you had gone to see Amadeus. And I had cut out movies by then. I wasn't going to movies. I just wasn't going to movies. So I read about Amadeus, and I got so interested in that, I picked it up, and it's one of my favorites, Mozart, and how can you not? Amadeus. Yeah. And I remember talking to Eisenbach because he was into singing.
Yeah.
I remember asking him, I said, Amadeus, Mozart? And I threw out to him, and I had just seen a Pavarotti doing Nessun Dorma, hitting that high C, and the Daughter of the Regiment, where he hit 16 of them. And I remember asking Eisenbach, can you hit a high C? And he said, I can hit a high C.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and then I remember Cyrano de Bergerac, when you came in to give your 75 lines, you had the nose, the costume. You remember that?
Yeah, now I do. I don't think I've thought of that in 40 years.
Yeah.
Good Lord. So I had that hat. I had the big hat.
Yeah, you had everything. It was beautiful. So those are memes that have been in my thing for a long time. I mean, they certainly. And then your mom. How is your mother?
Oh, she's great. She will be all a quiver that you asked. She's so fond of you, and we as a family, we talk about you a lot. You've had such an outsized influence as a teacher on both me and DeSales becoming professors, and my mother particularly always remembers you so fondly, and she's well. I mean, she's oh goodness. I mean, it's 40 years on. But she and my stepfather, Jack, live in Maine now year round. And I think they'd probably rather be somewhere warmer, but it's very safe in Maine. No COVID.
Well, your mom was always one of my favorites because I used to joke with her. Whenever I'd see her on the field or wherever field today, she didn't have a hair out of place, and I didn't know how she did that. I never saw a hair out of place.
No one knows. It's still true.
And then Callie, and by the way, Callie's one of the ones I want to come in for an interview. She's a doctor now, right?
Yes.
She's an MD. Callie was one of my favorites. And then the boy, what was your younger brother, Jay? He came and gave an assembly for us, and your mom and dad were there as a Marine and talked to the school about the Marine Corps and everything.
Wow.
So anyway, those were my memes that are up here, and
lodged.
So let me ask you this. You can help me with this. I have two former students, are PhDs in philosophy. One's at Notre Dame and one's at North Carolina. And I have interviewed one already, and one it will be in a couple weeks. And I have the same two questions I ask them. And I asked, tell me, in your philosophy, in the school, in the philosophy departments, what is the attitude concerning two things that I have wrestled with all my life, and I'm still wrestling with it? Determinism and consciousness.
Ooh.
How do you handle the determinism? You know, I picked up determinism years ago. I needed a course in educational psychology to teach when I was still up north. So I had to get this course. So I went up and they say, well, there are no more courses in educational psych. I said, I need a psych course. They said, all we have is one Skinnerian behaviorism. I said, sign me up. Well, it was fascinating. You could imagine it was fascinating. And that's where I picked up on determinism. I still haven't made my mind up. I'm 88 years old. I'm getting ready for that big, and I still made my mind up. You know, I had almost been sold on it completely. And then a couple years ago, I was reading somewhere where they came out and said, in subatomic physics, things have shown that say that determinism isn't true because of things in quarks in subatomic physics. And I was always wondering, well, how can they extrapolate from subatomic physics into something more or less, you know what I mean? So I haven't figured that out. Can you help me?
No, I'm a lowly social scientist. I don't know anything about philosophy at all. I do know that there are people all over Oxford who grapple with that sort of stuff, and very publicly. And I had a friend when I was in grad school who worked on all that sort of thing. He wrote a book. The title of it, I loved the title of it, Truth. That was it. No like colon and then a little explanation about what he meant by that. And then he wrote another book, and he got even more specific. The title of it was The Letter P, as in like if P then Q. And it was all about determinism, really, but I so far over my head that I couldn't possibly comment. But rest assured, the finest minds are grappling with these questions just like you are, so you're in great company.
You know, speaking of literature, tell me for some reason, and I don't know why it grabbed me when I was in college, in the book that stayed with me, and it had a great influence on me. And I've spent many years delving into the psychology of why it had the effect on me and everything. And some very interesting things there. The Way of All Flesh by Samuel Butler.
Yeah.
That book, for some reason, are you familiar with some of the characters? For some reason, I associate with Townley, you know.
the nice but dim chap. No. I don't know quite who I'd cast you in that book as, because everyone's quite flawed. But it's such an amazing novel. I just reread it at the start of the lockdown, in March or something. It seemed like a good thing to reread for some reason. How great that you are fond of it. That's wonderful.
And I've gone back and read certain parts of it. Ernest Pontifex, what fascinated me was they called Butler the man of one book. That's the only one that he wrote one other one, but that was the only thing. The Way of All Flesh. Yeah. It was supposed to have helped destroy the Church of England, or
it put a stake through the heart. And his other book, which is called Erewhon, which is the word nowhere spelled backwards, was a kind of a utopian fantasy, and it was based on his years as a sheep farmer in New Zealand. But it's a vapid book. It's not got life or spirit or any of that critical acuteness that The Way of All Flesh has. And anyway, having killed the Anglican Church, I think he felt he'd done enough.
Let me ask, as far as what books when you were there in 8th grade, were you doing the Count of Monte Cristo?
Yeah, we did that. Yeah.
Julius Caesar, Cyrano de Bergerac.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
What is and I'm always amused when I see these, the zeitgeist among the departments. Where is Charles Dickens now? Where's he stand now? He's gone through these different things.
Yeah.
Where is he now?
Yeah. Well, I think he's on the up. At least in England. I don't know about in America, but in England, he's on the up. And partly, I think that's because there was a spate of TV dramas based on his novels, and some really, really creative ones. Like there was a series of adapting David Copperfield very loosely, and it was full of modern concepts and swear words, and the casting was more up to date, and so it was a hybrid of David Copperfield for our times, and it was a huge success. And so people started reading the book, and then I think the Victorians are generally on the up, having been way on the down for a generation. Suddenly everyone's interested in the Victorians, and of course he's the head Victorian. So people read Dickens all the time. You can see people lugging his novels around on the subway in London. That's going to be a sign.
On intellectual thing on it, I don't know enough about it, but my gut feeling on it, he tells a good story.
He tells a great story.
He tells a good story. And if you don't have a good story, it's going to be, I used to assign to some of my kids, and a mother came up and thought she thought it was disgraceful. I'm assigning this book to her daughter in the 8th grade. It's so boring and everything. And I said, well, wait a minute. This story, it could be on television as a one of those afternoon, what do they call them? A
soap opera or something.
Soap opera.
Yeah.
Silas Marner. The story, a drugs, little baby Bob crawling in the snow, the guy loses his money, he loses, it's the great, and the writing, of course.
Yeah. Let's put it on TV and people lap it up, stick it between.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, Dickens is well worth it. I remember reading David Copperfield while I was there at Palm Beach Day, but I don't remember whether you assigned it or whether you just
doing it then, and then I dropped it and substituted Great Expectations.
A little easier to get through.
For some reason, and I've often looked into my own background, and again, when you get my age, you start searching. The only good thing about getting my age, old, the only one good thing, I'm going to tell you this. You can accept the truth or what you think it is. Not that it's necessarily the truth, but what you think it is. And that's the only good thing about getting old. You can accept what you think the truth. Might not be what you think it is. I always emphasize, I don't know if you remember this, but when a new class comes in, my 6th grade or my 8th grade, whenever it's a new class, I tell them, what we want to do is turn out critical thinkers. That's our job. And I always tell them the same thing. And as a parent asks me, well, what do you mean by critical thinker? I said, number one, you got to be a good reader. You can't be a critical thinker if you're not a good reader. Impossible. Number two, you got to be a clear writer, not a great writer, a clear writer to exchange ideas. And I said, that's basically our job at the school. Those two things. That's really our big mission. So the mother says, well, what's the third thing? I said, well, that one's a little harder. You got to be fair and objective. We try to do it here, but most of that's going to come from home, your environment there. And she said, and the fourth, I said, this is another tough one. You're going to have some moral courage. And when I tell the kids that, and I say, and this is the one that some of you have already encountered, where you're going to need some moral courage. Because if you're a critical thinker, you're going to, at times, disagree with your peers, which some of you have already done, with your country, with your government, with your church or your synagogue, with your parents. And those are very, very hard things to handle.
But those things were some of the most valuable classes I've ever done in my life. Those early in life art and music classes, because they make you better listener and looker a better listener and a better looker. And then you need to do that just as much as read in order to develop your critical thinking and your moral compass.
You know, one thing I really, it hurts me, music. When I grew up, we had music in school and everything, but I grew up in a family where I heard opera from the time I was born. So I had that background. But I tell the kids this, I said, look, take an interest in some other music besides your music of today, because most of you are going to outgrow it as you get old. Yeah. And if you get older and don't have music in your life, I can't imagine what it is. You know, I get home every day, I get on my bicycle, I do my 10 miles, and I'm playing operas and all kinds of music. I don't want to be a snob. I like some Western, some country music. I like folk music. I like some rock and roll and everything. But I had a teacher here, and she said, I remember she told me, she said, I don't like music. And I thought, a very intelligent woman, by the way, excellent teacher, excellent. I said, you don't like music? What do you mean you don't like? She said, I don't like music. And I can't imagine not having music around you.
It's hard.
You know?
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing? What do you do?
Oh, well, I mean, I spent a lot of my time singing, and I still do sing a lot in choirs, and I would say the nature of my voice, and I mean, I have no talent or anything, but the what it sounds like means I end up doing a lot of kind of Mozart and backward. So, you know, classical, Baroque music. And I love that stuff. And I particularly love the English choral repertoire, William Byrd and Thomas Tallis and Orlando Gibbons. That sort of music is very, very much in the air in England, not so much anywhere else. But it's certainly one of the reasons why I've stayed here in this country for over 30 years, is the kind of music you hear all day, every day. Well, I hear a lot of is that choral repertoire. So that's my favorite.
That's your favorite, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I tend to the Mozart. I love Mozart.
Yeah.
Marriage of Figaro, I can play that over.
Yeah.
And
that was on the radio this evening when I was driving home from work. That overture, the Marriage of Figaro, was on the radio. It's so joyous. It's just so.
Of course.
I have a memory. Maybe this is a false memory, but I have a memory of you standing on the balcony outside of your classroom, wherever that was 40 years ago, and there was a playground below you where the little kids played, and I don't really know why I would have been in that playground not as a very little kid, but maybe my brothers and sisters were in there or something. But I remember you standing on that balcony singing every now and then. You would sort of intone a bit of an aria and everyone would look up and then you'd bring it to a swift close. Is that a real memory or have I just...
Memory, that's a real memory. I used to do Pagliacci from the start, you know, yes. Especially where you cry at the end.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, but again, people who say that they don't, I have to have music every day. Every single day, there has to be some music there. And I'm not a snob. I think one of America's greatest musical geniuses was a gentleman by the name of Hank Williams.
Absolutely.
And if you hear some of his lyrics to the songs, I mean, the man was amazing.
Yeah,
it was amazing. So, but you gotta have music. You gotta have music. So anyway, give me some input. What do you think? Give us some. What would you recommend we do in the school that would improve it?
Oh heavens! I couldn't possibly presume not having any.
Well, let's do it on a general. Zoom for schools in general. How's that?
Any school. Well, yeah. I mean, I think we were alluding to it earlier. So I think schools, all schools, any schools, but particularly schools that are full of very privileged people who are on their way to power and influence and responsibility. It matters even more to hold civil values or the values of civility very high. And I think that's certainly something I and my generation and generations around me learned from Palm Beach Academy, or the day school as it was. That was so important, even maybe above or on par with academics. General decency and how to maintain it and
It's the
encourage
bedrock
it.
of civilization.
Yeah, it's the bedrock of civilization and the bedrock of politics and the bedrock of human achievement.
Pegram, it's been great.
Oh, it's
Do me a
been,
favor. Do me one favor. You stay in touch. Do you email your mom and dad?
of course, yes, and I can't wait. I'm gonna call them right after this.
Greco said to be sure to say hello to her, okay?
I will. She will be so pleased. I'm going to presume to send you her greetings.
Definitely.
The whole family sends you our greetings and our thanks. Good heavens, you have done so much for all of us and for so many generations of families in Palm Beach.
As I said, you were one of those 40 years ago, and those memes are all up there.
Oh.
Okay.
Well,
Thank
it's
you.
wonderful to see you virtually, and I will come see you personally. I
That's a
promise.
promise, I hope. Okay.